I don't want to do this anymore. My life, my career is coming to an end. How should my life look like? And then this is the place where they are finally find themselves in this what you call the transitioning space, where they're not quite ready to move on into something new yet, but they're also not quite ready to let go of what's present.
George is in his 50s and is in a fairly senior position in his company. But he says there are some changes and he's likely to take on more roles. George wants to scale down on his work commitments and spend time getting healthier, pursuing his interest in art, maybe even use his skills future credits to rescale and do a different field of work. So he wants to know, how can he go about managing this, and more importantly, should he ask for a demotion?
It's what I would term as like a fairly uneasy feeling, a stuck feeling, because you're not quite certain about the future, what exactly it's going to look like, but the present that you're living in seems to be maybe less and less relevant, right? Given how George, his age and what he has already achieved in his career. So typically, when someone like George, in their maybe 50s, maybe approaching 60s, a lot of professionals, they start to think this way, like George. They start to wonder, like, okay, the retirement is coming up. Do I still want to do what I want to do? And then sometimes there are push factors like changes in the company, expectations, people loading more work, and they feel like, I don't want to do this anymore. My life, my career is coming to an end. How should my life look like? And then this is the place where they are finally find themselves in this what you call the transitioning space, where they're not quite ready to move on into something new yet, but they're also not quite ready to let go of what's present. So that's why it can be a bit uneasy, and questions like, hey, should I get a demotion, or should I leave the company or do something totally different, upskill and reskill into something new? These will be thoughts that will just flood in.
And I think also when you're in your 50s, likely so your finances might be a bit more secure in terms of, maybe you have paid off a housing loan or it's already at the tail end of it. So, and your children, they're well taken care of. They're probably in their, they're probably adults at this point of time. So finances is not something that, maybe perhaps George is worried about. So he's okay with not climbing the corporate ladder, like he says. He's okay with not getting big salary increments. So how can he approach it? How can he have this conversation with his boss?
We need to know where we are right now and how we have developed to this point before we are able to think about what's the next step. It's almost like writing a story. You can't write the next chapter without looking back at the chapters that have been written before. So I think for George is to kind of, I'm sure in his job it's not just merely about earning the money, although right now it might feel like it. There must have been certain things that he really enjoyed doing and certain things that made him who he is today. So who is that George today, and how does he want to move forward from it? What would the new version of him look like? So that's part of taking stock. I think that's really important. The other thing is also to kind of prepare himself for different scenarios, to make certain decisions that maybe people might not understand.
Okay.
Right? Like for example, taking a demotion is not something that most people would agree or encourage you or say,
I'm sure his peers would be like, so silly. Why would you do that? Company want to give you money, just take lah.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly. But that's why George, having done that stock take, the review of themselves, and then thinking about their life, not just thinking about work, but thinking more about their family, the life after retirement as well. Start to vision a little bit more. Start to talk to your family members and maybe let's say spouses or kids, and start to vision like what would life outside of work look like before you go to your boss. It's like the boss is the last thing.
Okay.
It's like when you have kind of decided and you're very sure, because you know what, if you whatever you say already kind of sets the kind of expectations in the workplace. If you tell your boss, I don't think I'm up for it, right? You can almost imagine all the opportunities in the future.
I think one of the conversations that he can have with his boss is to say, look, I've done so much for the company. I've learned so much. I would actually like to be a mentor to people who are younger or people who have just joined the company. George says he's in a very, fairly senior position in the company. George, I think, can see this as an opportunity to just look out for who can take over his role in future and really train that next generation. I actually think that the younger people in the company would very much appreciate that, especially his boss.
Yeah, Tiffany, that's absolutely correct. One of the important tasks, right, developmentally for an individual as they reach retirement age, right, they often wonder, have I done what I needed to do? Have I made the world a better place? Was my life a total waste of time, or did I really contribute something, right? And mentoring somebody, building up somebody else, it adds to leaving a legacy behind.
Yes.
So for them to realize that they have supported a younger colleague with their career, maybe a couple of them, so that when you take a step back from work in future, you realize that, hey, a part of you still stays in the company. And then it actually helps the person's life. You made this young person's life better because the person is now more confident, is able to manage and manage his family, her family, and lead in the company as well.
So, George, you are really in an enviable position, because for myself, I would hope that in 10 to 15 years' time, I would be like you, able to say, you know what? I'm not really interested to hustle anymore. I'm happy where I am. I know what I've contributed to the company. I know who I am right now. So, take stock, like what Gerald said, take stock of who you are, and find an opportunity to mentor other people in your life. If, like George, you have a work-related question, send it to us. We are at cnapodcasts@mediacorp.com.sg. We're also on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube.
I'm Gerald.
And I'm Tiffany. Have a super work week ahead.